Hey guys, welcome back to the Hallicrafters T-54 restoration project. When we left off, we got the set working. Some of you noticed, hey, there was some 60 hertz ripple in the image. Yeah, and you know why? This is a cheap set. There's no shielding on anything. Notice not one single tube, even the local oscillator tube. The high impedance, most sensitive RF amp tube. Nothing. Twin lead right into the tube. No shielding on anything. Especially on the CRT, which means any stray magnetic fields will very much have an impact on this. I found a price list from back when this was sold new in the late 40s. It was the cheapest TV on the list. Well, no, except for the little 3-inch pilot set. As far as the 7-inch sets go, so people malign, say, the Motorola sets, the VT71s, for being cheap. No, they were $199. This was $139. This was the bargain basement 7-inch set. Even though it's Hallicrafters and supposedly they had a reputation for making quality stuff. No, this was a cheap TV. It does have a high tube count, though, and it has a seemingly complicated tuner that you'd think would have been expensive to make. But alas, so I'm not too concerned about that. And so, as far as where's the magnetic field coming from, yeah, at least I had the presence of mind to put the power choke on the opposite side of the chassis. But the AC comes in right here, the selenium rectifier, the voltage doubler, the AC rectifiers, the doubler, the tripler, they're right here. The power resistors to limit the inrush current are right underneath it. Could I retrofit a shield on it? Perhaps. Here, I'll show you one from an Admiral set. I don't know that I have any spare ones, though, and it didn't come with one, and I'm inclined to just, well, leave it as is. But here is what an Admiral, this is probably the nicest 7-inch shield I've seen. Some of them, they just took some sheet metal and sort of wrap tape around it and put it on there, but this is one that was actually spot welded and very nicely made. But anyways, that's what would normally sit here. Why doesn't it cover the whole thing? The deflection plates are right about there. That's where you want to have your maximum shielding. At any rate, so what do we have left to do? Clean up the knobs a little bit and mostly detail the cabinet. And here is the cabinet. Now, for a budget set, this does seem like it'd be a pretty darn expensive cabinet. This front panel is very thick metal. A lot of work to punch all this out, paint it, and put this grill detail on the perforated metal detail on the top. And the main cabinet itself has an interesting hinged flip top to it. So you get the tubes for servicing. Or rather, neat. So, I want to clean up the dust bunnies, and notice this. So, we were looking at the chassis, which was hot, and on the mounting blocks are isolated by thick phenolic sheets. Well, underneath the entire chassis is this. This is there to help insulate it in case any leads or anything were to stick out a little bit. This is an insulating mat between the metal cabinet and the chassis. So we want to clean all the dust bunnies out of there. I'll try to undent the top. It's going to be a little tricky because there is a reinforcing, there's a U-channel that runs along the front to help prevent it from getting dented in, but of course it got dented in, so I'll try to pop that back out. I'm going to clean it up a bit. It's a little rusty. Some crud spilled on it here. I can probably clean that off. I'm not going to paint this. Actually, I think this is just bare metal. It's got a little tarnished and corroded. And then when this is painted, or clear coated even, but this is definitely painted. So we use some automotive products on that. See if we can get that looking a little better, especially on the sides where you got more of a painted area. And really the main thing I wanted to make sure was cleaned up, and I already done it, is the plexiglass that goes over the CRT. There's a very thick rubber mask they use. This entire thing is just one cast piece of rubber, I assume. If you deform it carefully, there's a groove Then this plexiglass disc pops into it. I popped it out, went over with Novus number 2, put it back in, put VLR over the whole thing. There are some paint splotches I wasn't able to get out. With just a basic cleaning, we'll try to get those out. And yeah, reassemble the whole thing. Starting to work on the cabinet now. I put a bar underneath the top and managed to pretty well level it out by pushing down in strategic areas, and now I'm working on polishing it up using Meguiar's Scratch X 2.0. It may seem a little silly to polish it up when there's paint loss in areas, but oh boy, that looks a lot better than it did. This set was quite dirty. Took a few passes on the inside to clean it out. So yeah, there's some paint loss, but what paint is there looks a heck of a lot better now. I think there's a much better way to go than to repaint it. I do try to retain the original finish, paint, what have you, as much as I can when I work on these sets. Now for that splotch, let's try a little denatured alcohol. See if we can get that goo off of there. Seems like it might be, I don't know, tar or something like that. It's a little sticky. Huh, interesting. Not so much that it's whether or not it's taking that off as the effect it's having on the area around it. So, I was pretty sure when I worked on this set that both this and the Sentinel were around a heavy smoker, and I was confirmed by the owner that the guy who had the shop where the set resided smoked cigars. And, you know, it is a nice preservative on this stuff, so this actually may end up being pretty darn nice looking in the end. So this denatured alcohol isn't doing much for that, but on this other end, well, we'll see. But actually, no, it is taking that off too. It just took a little while to dissolve. Huh. So, wow, yeah. As grungy as this top may look, the whole thing may end up looking like that after a good clean. That I did not expect. Wow. That looks really nice. That looks really nice. So what I'm going to use on this. So I started putting some alcohol over here, and it's not cleaning it as effectively. So whatever goo was here protecting the metal nicely. This, well, I don't know. Let's try some purple power or simple green or something like that so you can get this cleaned up. Unfortunately, a variety of cleaners didn't do anything, including Fast Orange, and there's Contractor Solvent, and I tried Brake Cleaner. Really nothing's doing anything, so I've resorted to some Noxon metal polish, and yeah, that is taking the crud off. It's just going to be a lot of work, unfortunately. But, yeah, fine abrasive is what it requires, so here we go. I don't know if this is plated or not, but there are certainly areas where it's very dull. I assume it's corroded, so perhaps this was chrome plated, cadmium plated originally. I don't know. So it's not all going to be gleaming, but most of it will be when I'm done. It's just going to take a little. It's going to take a little while. Before I reinstall the chassis, making sure everything is still working properly, and I wanted to address something. So when I was checking for vertical nonlinearity and was probing around, saw through the waveforms on my scope, some of you mentioned, hey, you're using AC coupling, which could introduce a curve when you're looking at lower frequency signals. Yeah, I suppose it could. Well, here's the problem, though. So if I go to DC mode, depending on where I probe this, there's a really high DC offset. So, for example, I'm on DC coupling mode now with about 10 volts per division, and it's not too tall, but if I go to 5 volts per division, it's off the top of the screen, and that's what the offset control or position control as far as it'll go. In other words, it's blown off the top of the screen. So that's why I was using AC coupling. So no, it's not ideal, but it's kind of my only option right now. So anyways, I don't think it's that big a deal. It looks pretty darn good. The nonlinearity is very slight. So here we're looking at AC coupling mode. Yeah, there's a very, very, very slight bend to it. I think that's just fine. And again, it could be the scope misleading us a little bit. Let's go back to the crosshatch pattern and take a look. Well, that's not too shabby. So I'm really, really not concerned about it. Now, while I was doing that, I did tack in some new parts, so I need to clean that up a bit. And I'll keep it running on the bench a little while I polish up the knobs. Been working on that. Remember, we're going to leave the old white paint blob on some of the knobs as it had originally. And I'll use my reference photos to put those back in the right position because they indicate which VHF channels were available in the broadcast area where this set came from. I'm just using Novus number 2 on everything, but cleaning up the screen cover as well. Doing a little dry run test fitting of everything. Cabinet cleaned up pretty well. Of course, we have some paint loss and scuffed, but I think it looks considerably better than it did when I started. Also spent a whole lot of time scraping off all the surface crud and then polishing up the knobs. The kind of plastic they use, I don't know if it's tenite like the Predicta screens, but it forms a similar white crud that needs to be removed. Now, we'll give them credit for this. This is a bit of clever engineering. Not so nice when you're servicing it, but the way the CRT gets mounted. Let me pop the lid and I'll show you what I mean. If you recall, this set has a hinged lid for servicing, which is nice, but it can be a little challenging to get open. It's a little peg that sticks down on either side and snaps into this. Sometimes I've had to resort to a screwdriver to pry it open a bit. But anyways, if you recall, this has a hinged service lid. It can be a little tricky to get open, but once you do, it sure makes servicing a snap. Now, what I thought was neat was, so CRT needs to be supported, of course, and have a mask to make it a rectangular opening. What they did is the way they did that is they have a CRT socket here that supports it on this end. The other end fits into this heavy rubber gasket. It itself goes through a cutout on this thick metal front panel, but none of this is secured. So what holds the gasket in place is the pressure of the CRT pushing against it. And what supports the CRT is the gasket pushing back on the CRT. So there are no fasteners here. So the CRT, sheet of metal with a hole in it, and then this piece of rubber. No screws, no adjustments, no tightening, nothing. It's all floating. But by all the pressure against the various parts, it all is very, very secure. Another clever bit of engineering. This is electrostatic set, not magnetic. There's no yoke you can rotate to level out the picture. Because if I put this in crooked, the horizon line on the TV could be like that or like that. So what they did is, because you can't move this because it's so firmly supported in the front, is I put a couple screws here. If you loosen those, it loosens up this end of it. And there's enough give when you do that that you can rotate it. If you recall, the top of this cabinet is hinged for servicing, which is a really neat feature. It can be a little hard to get these snap-in rivet thing. If you recall, the top of this cabinet is hinged for servicing, which is a neat idea, but it can be a little tricky to get open. These pegs that come down snap into mounts on the side rails. It can take a little bit of force to pop it open, but once you do, you have access to everything. Now, what I thought was neat was the way the CRT is supported. When you just have the cabinet out and you're working on it, the entire front is not supported. It's only attached with a plug and socket in the back. But when it's together, well, there's a bit of clever engineering here. They need to do a few things. They need to support the CRT, and they want to mask it off so you have a rectangular opening. So how'd they do that? Well, they have a heavy piece of metal on the front. They cut a circle out of it, and they molded this heavy rubber gasket. On the other side, it's very form-fitting to the curved glass in the face of the CRT. Then it has a snap-in piece of plexiglass to keep all the dust and dirt out. But there are no fasteners on this. There is nothing that gets tightened down. The pressure of the CRT pushing up against this gasket holds it firmly in place because it has, on the other side of this rubber, it has a flange. Conversely, the pressure of the gasket pushing back on the CRT supports it and holds it firmly in place. So I thought that was a rather nice way to do it all. But one other potential issue is electrostatic CRT, not a magnetic. Magnetic, if there's a yoke here, you can loosen the yoke mounting and move it around to get the picture geometry correct, get the horizon leveled out. With these, you need to get the orientation of the CRT right. If you don't, the picture can be crooked. The way they accomplish that in this set is the CRT socket has slots on it, and so there's two screws. You can loosen these up and you can rotate the whole thing a few degrees in either direction. So it's not all bad with this design. So we're just about done. Two things I need to address. One, I don't know how the antenna lead was dressed in this set. There need to be some screw terminals so you can attach your twin lead to it. I don't see anything on the back of the cabinet. I'm not sure how that's supposed to go. There's a hole here, but I don't see the typical kind of mounting you'd see, so I'll have to rig something up for that. The other thing is on this side, the AC interlock. When I first opened up the set, this was attached by a single screw, and there's a power cord plugged into that, just going out through a hole in the back. I just noticed that, oh, there's a corresponding bracket up here that's been bent over. I'm sure the way this originally was is this was bent, or this was flat, and the power cord attached up here, and when the lid closed, the two mated, and as soon as you pop the lid open, it disconnected power from the chassis, so you couldn't have it powered up while the lid was open. I'd like to restore that, but I gotta see if I have the right kind of power cord and whatever hardware I might need to do that. If not, I'll just do it how it was before and just have the power cord plugged in here and run through the back. Alright, I think we can make this work. Alright, I think we can make this work. I straightened out that top bracket. And I'm about to remount this, but I think we can do a little better job than that. This is going right to the wall outlet. I think maybe at the very least put some heat shrink tubing around those exposed leads there so things don't short together. And then I will mount this guy down there, and the power cord like this will get mounted up top, and the idea is when you close the lid, the two will complete the circuit. Well, along with the power switch in front anyways. Alrighty, I reattached the two wires going to the chassis with some heat shrink tubing and securely mounted this on its little bracket. And I have my new power cord installed, and while installing it I noticed there was a little metal strip here with some cushioning material wrapped around it. I'm sure that was there to wrap the cord around, and yeah, when you close it, they do meet up, and you get power going through the set. So, there she is. Let's rig everything up and do some final tests. Now, I do still need to rig up the twin lead. Well, here's the situation on the back. There's a slot here where twin lead could have gone through, and maybe that's how it was originally, but right above that we have a hole that's, I don't know if it's original or not, but you know what? I can take a 75 to 300 ohm balun and mount it on the inside, and then the end user can just touch a 75 ohm signal source rather than having a couple screw terminals and attaching this and whatnot. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Here she is all back together. Here's how that connector goes right into the back. Very nice and neat. Alright, let's power it up and take a last look at it playing. As always with these sets, dim lighting is best. Just can't get used to that. The power knob is also contrast. I'm so used to it being volume. It looks pretty darn good. Little sound. Alright, this is the end of another successful project. Hope you enjoyed this look at restoring a classic 1948-49 Hallicrafters T-54 7-inch set with push-button tuning.
Some things are better left to a professional. Like when it comes to finding financial advisors. So take the free quiz, then you'll be matched with up to 3 vetted fiduciary financial advisors at smartasset.com. Shopping online comes with digital threats. So turn on NordVPN. Steer clear of phishing websites. Please. Mr. Kosher, set course for Beta Z. Vault 9.
Set's playing quite well. I call this a successful project.
You wanted to see me, Captain?
Sets can be a little finicky with the brightness and the contrast. It's tough to get used to the contrast being on the power knob. So every time you turn the set on, you got to fiddle around with the contrast.
To benefit from your talents for another year.
Thank you, sir.
But yeah, there we go. That is going to be a wrap. Hope you enjoyed this look at restoring a classic 1948-49 Hallicrafters T-54.
be able to go.
The Academy must make you wait, that's true.